here he goes. Go. Good. That's a big fish.
Full hand on tail. Yeah, looks
Look how broad that thing is.
what if I was one that pulled me in?
Beautiful. Oh my. That's a big fish. Rip.
That's what I've been waiting for all day.
That's over 6. Oh. That's a good fish. Donkey. That's a heavy spot.
Oh my God, please get the net. Please get the net.
I got you, buddy.
That was the weirdest one ever. There you go. Net. What the? Oh my God, he's got another 4.5.
Oh my God, this might be it. If I can land this fish. Holy sh! 5.06. She's thick. Oh my God! Oh my God! Holy! What a beast! Dude, that's it! That's it! 4 pounds small. Picture. Oh wow! That might be a 4. That might be a 4. Yeah, it's a 4. You guys show that off to 4 pounds 12 ounces. Holy! Trailer just getting that. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that's unbelievable. That's it.
He's still swimming. What happened to me?
Yup.
5.3. Sorry for freaking out. My first fish of the year.
There we go. That's a big fish. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes! 414 though. Gee. Not too shabby.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back, Reel Nothern Bass Talk. We are joined by a very special guest tonight, Mr. Ben Nowak.
What's
Please
going
tell
on,
me if I got
guys?
that right.
Yeah, it was
Has he been
perfect.
jamming?
Good, good.
Yeah,
I'm always terrified. I'm like, it looks like it should be really straightforward, but you just never know.
yeah, you could get in there and like totally butcher it somehow. I'm sure there's some way, but
I
How are you
have
guys?
been known to do it a time or two. We're really good, man. How you been?
good. I'm excited to hop on here. I mean, just to give people some background and like looking at some of the footage that you guys have posted in the past, I think we're gonna have a lot of stuff that's pretty similar from where you guys live to where I live. So I'm excited about this.
Nice. Yeah, dude, I'm stoked because I know you're in Michigan, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I did have it right. So what would actually be your home waters?
I fish Lake Huron a lot, but we have a bunch of glacial lakes, like small glacial inland bodies of water, like small flat sections that drop off into like 40, 50 foot. So
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much like what we have in New Hampshire to a T.
Yeah.
Although I would say a lot of, well, not a lot. We had the Lakes region in New Hampshire, which is like Lake Winnipesaukee is our biggest lake. It's 42,000 or 46,000 acres, I forget. But then there's like another half dozen or so lakes that are in like the high 3,000s to low 6,000s for overall surface
And then
acreage.
there's like 10,000 teeny tiny little ponds and small lakes and
Bring that up a little bit.
all over the place.
Yeah, but yeah, a lot of it's the same. It's just, those nice glacial lakes that drop off steep. I mean, even going, we fish everywhere from New Hampshire, Vermont. We go down to Cape Cod. It's kind of funny. There's actually quite a few ponds we fish in Cape Cod that are deeper than they are higher above sea level, which I thought was always kind of funny and odd.
that's crazy.
Yeah, you're fishing lakes that are only like 50, 60 feet above sea level, and they've got like a handful of 90-foot holes. It's like, neat.
That's crazy, dude. So like you and I were talking this fall about how kind of things up here were getting finished up and we were icing over, and you guys can pretty much fish somewhere all year, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, just about. Well, and a lot of that is because of where we're located, being in Milford, New Hampshire. We're like almost cradling the Mass, New Hampshire line. Yeah, in like dead center east-west. So
right there.
we were talking a little bit before the stream, for us to get to Lake Champlain, about 3 hours, 3 to 3.5 hours, depending upon what ramp we do. We go to Candlewood down in Connecticut.
Lake Champlain's right about there.
Yeah, that's really handy.
It is. If you can tell that that's New Hampshire, we live right here. Lake Champlain's up here.
Yeah, it's perfect. See?
We're only 3 hours ish from Candlewood Lake, which is another, like top tier lake in the Northeast.
Where do you live?
And then,
Yeah. So in the mitten, I'm like right here.
Oh, perfect. I know that one from the Navy. Everybody was from the Midwest.
I was like, I know you know this from somewhere. I'm waiting to hear the story. But yeah, then like the added benefit is we're only 2 to 2.5 hours from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and because everything's so low lying and it gets beat to death by wind like all winter. It's a different world down there, and it's really not that far as the crow flies going south from us, but just all that wind coming off the ocean, it just keeps everything kind of warm. Some people talk about like salt content in the air coming off the ocean waves and just carry it on the breeze, and that may help. I don't know. I just know that any time of the year we can go find open water. I never actually have to put my boat away up here. It's nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, we drove about 8 hours south to go to Dale Hollow over the weekend, but like that's pretty much the closest I think you can go and actually start to find some real open water where you can start to catch some fish. Other than like Cumberland, obviously, and some of those other lakes in the general area. But yeah 8 hours is pretty much the closest.
Damn. How was Dale Hollow? That's on my bucket list.
It was, I think we hit it at a really weird time. Like it was really good the week before we went. And then we hit like a cold front where it went from like 60 degrees during the day to like 35 and 40 degrees.
Yep.
And then as we were getting ready to leave, you had that post front and it was starting to get up in like the mid 50, 60 degree range again. So we hit it like right on the day we got there was the pre-front and we smashed them. And then the next 2 days were tough. And then on Sunday we ended up leaving, but
damn,
it was fun.
What were you about to say?
Where did we go when we had those conditions that happened to us and it just shut everything off?
It's happened too many times. I can't remember any specific.
It's any time you travel anywhere.
Well, it's especially tough for me because I get 1 day a week. I've got 2 young kids, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and my wife works evenings and then Saturdays. So it's like if I can get out more than once a week, it's a blessing. And there's there's occasions in the summer I can sneak out here and there, but otherwise I got to take vacation time to be able to sneak out for a good trip. So more often than not, it's like, do we even look at the weather for Sunday? No, I mean, unless we're going up to like the bigger lakes and we need to know what the wind speeds and directions are going to be, then it's just like, it doesn't matter what the weather is. We got 1 day.
Yeah, you just have to go like.
It just changes no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, which is honestly, it's kind of nice because it's put us on the back foot a fair number of times. So that's what we're accustomed to. I don't get to pick all the nicest days of the week to go out and fish. I just got to deal with what we got.
Yeah, that's right. And especially like this time of year, if you don't have really good conditions, you have like bite windows that are like half an hour long at the beginning of the day, end of the day, right? So you just kind of got to make the most of what you have there.
Yep. Yeah, we found that. We went to Lake Champlain January 2nd this year. That was fun. Wildly unexpected.
Crazy.
Dude, it was still wide open even like 2 weeks after that. It was pretty wild. Then I went the week after that. You were gone with your girlfriend, so I went down. I fished with a subscriber down in Cape Cod and did a tournament, and we did not bad but not great. And it was to a T what you just said. You had like that one window in the morning, and then if we'd stayed a little bit later, it could have been maybe a little bit better. Like we saw all the trout and everything just going ape shit, but at that point it was already like 4 o'clock and I still had a 2.5 hour drive back through Boston crap. I mean, not really Boston per se, but like Brockton but
close enough that it's not
Waltham.
fun.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Anytime you're down that corridor, it's not generally a fun time.
What, driving or just being there?
No, just being there.
No, both. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
All right, but before I turn over to you, Ben, to really kind of introduce yourself, and I'm guaranteeing that 99% of the people here, if not 100%, know who you are, but I'm still going to give you the floor in a minute. But before we get started, everybody that's already here, thank you very much. As always, we greatly appreciate your time to come over, hang out, and listen to us rant and ramble about everything. Tonight's topic, we're going to talk about early spring smallmouth tactics. I kept going back and forth how I want to do this, and I was like, you know what, let's just do smallmouth, because it's probably going to still take us a while. So other than that, if you could do me a favor, if you haven't done so yet, please drop a like on the stream. It really helps immensely. Like, I've been looking at all the statistics and analytics, whatever you want to call it, and it's been awesome. Like the last 6 to 8 weeks now, even it's been like steadily climbing. So all that effort from you guys,
It's a noticeable difference.
yeah, doing that, sharing it on Facebook, Instagram, like all that stuff, it's been hugely helpful. So thank you for that. If anybody wants to donate, by all means, feel free. No pressure from us. We're going to, at this point, we don't have anything definitive for what we'd like to upgrade on other than a second camera, because it would be nice to be able to have different perspectives. But kind of thinking out loud for what our plans are with money that we're earning from the channel and everything that we're doing, Instagram, the whole 9 yards, is we're traveling a lot more this year. We just recently decided to put the kibosh on this one big tournament trail we had been hemming and hawing over the last few weeks. We were talking because the Candlewood fishing camp we're doing is just going to be, it throws a wrench in everything, and I'd rather prioritize the camp. So I've got one big solo tournament I'm planning right before that. We'll see how that goes. Other than that, we're just going to travel. We're going to go to Maine a lot more this year. Probably Champlain a few times. I definitely plan on going back to the St. Lawrence River sometime in October or November. I want to get on that really cold bite up there. Lake Ontario really more than St. Lawrence. We'll just follow TJ up.
I want to catch a smallie up there on 250.
Oh, you will.
It'd be cool.
On the depths, yeah. So anyway, if you want to donate, you can 1 of 3 ways right here in the chat on YouTube. If you're already signed up, do that way. Otherwise, in the video description below, there's links to our PayPal and Venmo. No pressure. Anything you guys do is helpful, and we appreciate it. Last but not least, this stream tonight brought to you by Beast Coast Fishing. And there's a specific reason for that, because I guarantee you it's going to be a primary topic, at least from me, as we're going to be talking about this ice out, early spring smallmouth. It has been a staple in my tackle box for pretty much since I picked it up, but especially the things we've learned over the last couple of years and the additions that he's brought to the lineup. It's like I don't go out with at least 3 rods tied up with something from Beast Coast. So if you're interested, go to beastcoastfishing.com. You can check out what they have. We do not have a discount code to share with you, but if you order something, there's a little special notes section down there. Just right in there. The Reel Nothern Bass guys told us to tell you to get a code. Derek's a busy man. He's like, I don't have time to make that happen. I was like, I'm going to get people to harass you to make this work. So do that. But anyway, I'm done. All right, Ben, floor is yours. Go ahead and introduce yourself for a minute here.
Yeah, man. So like you guys, I'm from the north. So I'm from Michigan area. I like to fish smallmouth. And a lot of people might not think it, but I also fish quite a bit of largemouth. Like that's how I got into the sport, was largemouth fishing. So a lot of smallmouth and largemouth stuff around me. Deep glacial bodies of water, and I really like chasing these Great Lakes fish. Like if I could go do one thing for the rest of my life, it's probably fishing the Great Lakes or big, huge, enormous bodies of water for smallmouth. That's my favorite thing.
So much fun. It's so cool being out in the middle of the water. Like we've been in Lake Ontario, and you're out there 15, 20 miles away from everything. You don't see land anywhere. You're like, it's kind of nice out here.
It is. It puts things into perspective. The first year we went to Lake Ontario was 2019, and so it was pre-COVID. You could go wherever, and we got up there kind of like early afternoon. So we just fished in Chaumont Bay, and because that's where our house was with the Airbnb that we got. The next day was perfect. It was like glass. I was like, all right, we're making the 20 mile run out to Maine Duck Island, way out in the lake. We got halfway out, we're looking around, we're like, I don't see anything. Looking at my GPS, I'm like, don't you dare shut off.
There's no service out there. And the only time your phone ever goes off is when those big tanker ship, like cargo ships go by. And they must have like
their own,
some sort of cell service or Wi-Fi or whatever.
Yep.
But your phone starts blowing up. You're like, oh my God, we have service. And we didn't catch on to it till like the third one goes by.
Third one went by, I'm like, I'm going to start texting my wife. We're still out here at the island, just so you know.
Yeah, we're not dead. Like, we're still alive.
We might be in a little bit if the wind picks up, but
yeah, seriously.
And it did.
You know just as well as us or anybody else, when you're talking about that big water, things can get hairy real fast if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, and especially wind direction changing.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. So even just little things, I think tiny differences make have a huge impact, especially on the Great Lakes, whether the fish are biting or not, or whether you can comfortably get places. But I also feel like when you're on that big water, like there are fish that no one may have ever targeted. Yeah. Right. And I think that for me was one of the coolest things. Is I got into it when kind of Great Lakes fishing was just kind of blowing up, especially up on Lake Huron. And so for me, it was really cool. I'm like, man, I'm fishing these areas and there's walleye boats, but no bass boats. So yeah, like you guys said, that's one of the coolest things. You get out in the middle of nowhere. You're like 20 miles out on the lake or 15 miles out on the lake, look around, and there's hardly anything except a little speck of shoreline over there.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
And that's an island.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the coolest thing about the Great Lakes, like fishing those big bodies of water, even Champlain. I mean, it happened to us a couple weeks ago when I caught that catfish. You were targeting a species, but you have no idea what you're going to get.
Oh yeah.
And it's like hooked into that channel cat, and I was like, I felt a fish fight like that, and it was a lake trout, but not that big. And like, it's crazy. It's just so cool that you can catch anything out there.
Yeah, first lake trout I ever caught, we were smallmouth fishing, and we were like 8 miles out from the launch, and I saw these fish on live scope, so I cast out to them. My blade bait went down, and this fish came over and ate it. And I hooked in, and I'm like, "Oh my god, a huge laker!" We didn't know we were going to catch like 50 lakers that day. They just all loaded up on this shallow reef. They're area spawners, so they get on these shallow reefs and they kind of just lay their eggs everywhere, and they were everywhere. It was crazy. It was the coolest day ever.
We've gotten days like that, but we didn't catch that many, but we maybe like a handful on a day.
Yeah,
And they only get like, I mean, ones we were catching maybe 25, 28 inches.
Yeah.
Nothing huge yet.
That's so cool, though.
It's still so much fun.
I keep hoping for that. Every time when we go up to Champlain this time of the year, it's like you're gonna get into like a pile of Lakers, perch, and smallmouth all like in the same hole.
Yeah,
we haven't been that fortunate yet, but we went up January 2nd, and I was like, all right, I know one area, Mallett's Bay. There's a bunch of humps out there, and I know that can be good. Let's just go there because then I don't have to run far, and I got to get my motor worked on anyway. I was like, let's just go beat the crap out of that. And we caught a few, and it was all right. And then talking to people after, we're like, yeah, you were not in the right area. It's like, I don't know. It's the first time I've ever been up here this time of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
I spawn like that too.
Joe LaBarbera, he's the dude.
He's
Yes,
a riot. Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of talked about yourself, but go ahead, take a minute, like talk about your website, all your social media, and like YouTube channel and everything. While you're doing that, Andrew, kind of take over for a second. I forgot to say goodnight to my kids. I was racing back down here to get you back in here. So let me run upstairs really quick.
Go.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I've been doing the YouTube thing since probably 2015, 2016. Kind of started with the Great Lakes smallmouth stuff. I had some opportunities for guys to come up and fish. So really, that's how it kind of got started. And then I really transitioned into like a how-to channel and a tips channel with some fishing stuff mixed in. And then recently I started working with Do It Molds over the past 2 seasons. And so I've got another channel called the Bait Making Channel, where basically all I do is make fishing tackle, which is a pretty cool twist on what I'm already doing anyways. So,
Well, yeah, obviously
Yeah.
making your own baits is definitely pretty sick. I didn't even know you did that. That's really sick.
yeah, it's like a passion project, like a second project that I've just been working on, trying to, grow that channel as well. But I kind of figured it was like something I was already doing that wasn't getting traction on my regular channel. So I just figured I'd make a second channel and kind of go with it. So it's been going pretty well.
Channel right now?
Nice. That's awesome.
The Bait Making Channel.
Yeah, what's the name of that?
It's just the Bait Making Channel.
Oh, the Bait Making Channel.
Yeah. I figured we make it as easy as possible. So if anyone searches bait making,
No, that's perfect.
The Bait Making Channel.
My man understands SEO, that's for sure.
Hey, there you are.
Northeast bass fishing. When you're bass fishing on Champlain and hook a 10-pound drum and a jig, it's a lot of fun. The very first time I went up there was the spring of 2020. And the very first fish I hooked ended up being like a 8-pound drum on a tube on 8-pound test. That was fun. And then right before that, my buddy DJ on a drop shot with 6-pound test hooked into a near 20-pound drum. Dude, 36-volt trolling motor on high for like 5 minutes, just chasing around. He's just like, I don't know what to do.
the drum are insane because like you'll fish a bait through an area and they'll pound it like 3 times before they eventually get it in their mouth.
Well, the one
That's
I got
crazy to me.
just like hit it hard like ORG. Like
Oh yeah. The only 2 I've ever caught were just like that too. That tube, it was just like thump. And then same deal, because you caught what was it, 17 pounds we figured, 17 and a half?
yeah, somewhere in there, yeah.
And then I caught one the day after that was like maybe 10, I think.
It's 10 or 12, yeah.
Yeah, but both of them, it was just like just dragging a jig, all of a sudden, thump. Like, oh, giant large, here we go. Set the hook.
Yeah.
You're like, something's wrong.
This is way too big.
Yeah.
One more thing before we get into this. if I can show that. That's from my youngest. He wanted me to show it. That is
Oh, that
old
is
Big
awesome.
Blue, my 2006 Tundra. I traded in back in August with the boat behind us and the whole family. The little baby looking child all the way in the back, that's actually my
me.
wife. He's like, make sure you tell him that that's mom.
That's so funny.
He was so like he drew it last week. He came down, pinned it on the wall, and when I came down, set up, he's like, "Oh, Dad!" He runs a horse and pops that pin out. He brings it over. He's like, "You have to show this tonight." I was like, all right, I will.
That's awesome. How old is he?
He just turned 6.
Last week, right?
2 weeks ago. What is today? 9th? Yeah, almost 2 weeks ago. We're our birthdays are 2 weeks apart. So I turned 38 and he turned 6. Getting old.
The kid is so. So I came over last week. I forget what weird. I think
we were planning for the expo.
Planning
So we had
for
to
the
build the
expo.
display case and all that crap.
So I come over and we're having pizza, and he's like, I was like, it's pretty good. And he's like, yeah, the only thing I can taste is it bussin'. I'm like, dude,
It's like,
where'd you learn this?
it's from his 10-year-old brother.
Jeez,
They're a riot.
kids.
All right, let's get into the smallmouth, early spring smallmouth. What I'm thinking is let's kind of tackle this from ice out until pre-spawn.
Yeah.
Like when water's like 55. Because like, yeah, once you hit 55, there's still a really magical window in most cases, but actually up to like 58. Once water's like consistently 58 for a day or two, that's like they start fanning out beds, at least up here in New Hampshire.
Yep.
That's what we've seen a lot of. So I would say from ice out to like 50 to 55-ish, but at least from what we've seen, 50 to 55, really depending on weather conditions, it's all kind of the same what they're going to be doing leading right up to spawning. So we can just call it 50. But let's talk about like immediate ice out smallmouth tactics. What is your go-to when you're out there tackling them, your first trip out of the season?
I go as shallow as I possibly can. So I'm looking like this is the most backwards information than what you're going to read online. But like I found that I'll go out to all these deep spots, like my wintering areas, and there might be a fish here, but there's not like a big pod like I was catching them in the fall. What happens on a lot of our bodies of water is wherever you have water flowing into your lake that's warm, like runoff, or like rivers flowing in or creeks flowing in, like all those fish tend to stack up at those inflows. So I'll go like 2-3 foot of water and fish pretty fast. So I'll throw like a crankbait, a jerk bait. I'll throw a lipless crankbait for them quite a bit. And like those are my favorite ways to catch them in the spring because I've just got my butt kicked too many times trying to spend so much time deep and struggling. So I like to fish really shallow, like anywhere that there's an inflow with some hard cover and deep water access.
What are you usually looking at for water temps when that's going on? Is it still like high 30s or is it already like right into the low 40s at that point because you have so much water coming in?
It's typically like upper 30s, low 40s. So like maybe 43 degrees is the highest you're going to start to see, especially with ice out. But a lot of those fish will stay in that relative area. So like once I locate a spot or like an area that they're going to be in, you can just sort of push out a little bit because they'll start to move into like that 7-8 foot range when that water gets into the mid 40 degrees. And then they'll start to like really key in on bait fish. But that first bite is like really, really shallow, like the dirtiest inflows that I can find that have warm water.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's like
It's
polar opposite of what we've always done, but we really haven't targeted like ice out smallmouth a lot because that's like the best time for us to go for big largemouth, and that's been paying off big time. So it's like every year we're like we should really go out for those smallmouth, like, or we can just go crack a bunch of big largemouth instead. All right.
The largemouth are so much fun in the spring because you can like go throw I love throwing a swim jig, so I like getting up shallow and throwing a swim jig.
Oh yeah.
But I love to fish like the 8 to 10 foot range with the jerk bait on like early season largemouth. But yeah, smallmouth. Smallmouth, man, I go shallow. And it really, what opened my eyes to it a couple of years ago was I had a square bill tied on for some largemouth stuff. And I was coming out of one of the rivers that we typically launch in. And I'm like, man, I just got to try something. And I knew there was some riprap running out. And I fired that square bill up into like the dirt. 2 or 3 cranks, caught a smallmouth. Cast it back in there. It was like 50 fish on this one little point that came out. And then I'm like, shoot, man, I think I've been doing this wrong for a long time.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me, man, how
fish.
shallow those fish get. Because I think what happens, so like this is what I've kind of deducted over the past couple of years, right? All of your bait fish, so your perch, your bluegill, your shiners, everything that's under the ice, as soon as ice comes on, will go under first ice in like really shallow water. That's why you can walk out on shallow ice and catch fish with your little jigger poles.
Yep.
The same thing happens at the last ice. All those bait fish will push up into those like inflows where you have your last ice in the shallow water. You can do the same exact thing. So what I think is happening is all those smallmouth follow that bait in and they feed there. The only exception for this rule is going to be on glacial bodies of water where you have like deeper water grass and perch. Those perch get on that like green grass that somehow made it through the winter, and that's where you find your smallmouth. But everywhere else, I'm fishing like dirt shallow.
See, that's a lot. And so pretty much anywhere that's really worthwhile for smallmouth fishing near us in New Hampshire would be the bigger lakes. So they're all deeper glacial lakes.
Yeah.
Anything that's like smaller, where especially I think a lot of that shallower approach would benefit us, unfortunately, are also designated trout ponds in New Hampshire. So you can't even touch them till the fourth Saturday in April. So in like any of the other spots that, you know, aren't designated trout ponds that have smallmouth, most of the time it's not really worth a damn, or it's the same body of water that's got like tank largemouth.
Yeah.
So we've only had that experience where if we're going for early smallmouth, we're going deep water, glacial kind of bodies of water, you know, steeper drops, like, you know, average depth is more like 70 to 80 feet. So it's definitely a little different for us in that approach, but I wholeheartedly agree with you where you find them. You get around the perch and get around a lot of that green grass, which we see plenty of. I mean, we pull it up pretty much every time we go out there. Because a lot of what we like to do, especially now, this time of the winter, coming into early spring, we're dragging jigs out deep, blade baits, whatever. And more often than not, you know, okay, yeah, I see something on the 360, or now we have active target. We start seeing stuff. It's like, all right, we'll throw over there because kind of see something going on. And next thing you know, you pull up some like nuclear green grass. Like, all right.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tasty. It's like seaweed salad. I like that stuff.
So on your glacial stuff, did they get on that like steep break, and then where it starts to taper out? That's what we found too.
Yeah. I would say in the spring, well, actually, you know what? It's pretty consistent from what we found so far. In the fall and the spring, we're fishing those really steep drop-offs, and they're not necessarily on the drop-off. Sometimes it could be on that flat adjacent to it, out even like 300, 400, 500 feet. But, you know, depending on what the weather is, they'll just make that shift right back to that bank, and they'll work themselves up or down, however they need to, depending upon what weather conditions are doing.
They usually be in the same area, just that area could be very big.
Yeah.
Compared to some, like, yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think. No, go ahead.
What I've started to notice too, and it's really interesting, you guys said this, it has to be near that deep water. Like if you don't have that like hard drop to deep water, even though I'm catching them dirt shallow, right? Like understand the area that I'm catching them is right on the edge of the river channel. So those fish can go off of that flat where you have the rock and whatever and fall into the river channel.
Yeah, they can
Because-
get in and get out quick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, quick transitions from that nice, shallow, warm water when the weather permits for it and it makes them happy, back down to the deep water for when things go south really quick, which in New England, it flips like a freaking light switch. It's
Yeah,
just, it's all
same
over
here.
the place and rapidly. Yeah, so you know exactly how it is. So yeah, having exactly as you said, being in close proximity to that steep drop to get back to deep water fast is definitely key.
There's a great question. North side shallow water or all the shores? So you're going to have certain shores or certain areas that have more inflows. I'm looking for like your major creeks or your areas that you have like big water inflows. So I guess you could say like most of our bodies of water aren't necessarily huge, or there's not a whole lot of influx of water, like areas water is coming in. So it's just a couple major creeks, and wherever those are, I can like bounce them until I figure out where the fish are at. A couple of years ago, one of the bites I got on, we had this, it was essentially a reservoir, and these fish would go way up the river to the fast moving water and get on these flats that push in. I don't think it necessarily mattered whether it was the north side or south side, but there just had to be flowing water with access to deep water, and it had to be warmer. If it weren't warmer, the fish weren't there.
No, it makes sense. I'm looking at a map for like ponds around us around here. I'm like, I wonder if I could pull up like a really good example.
You're only looking at the ones that we fish.
Yeah, I don't want to pull these up. It's like some of our favorite bodies of water. Well, you know what? I mean, this one I wouldn't mind giving up. I mean, that's like a really well-known spot.
Yeah,
but that doesn't quite meet the criteria of like everything we've been discussing so far.
Right.
So, yeah.
I've got a really good one. I'll
There's
pull up.
probably a lot of them that don't.
Honestly, if you've got one, I think you have permission. You should be able to pull it up.
Yeah, I'll pull one up real quick. Well, a couple pretty good examples of this.
So give up your honey holes now.
By the way, Navionics web
Those New
app,
England
for anyone that's watching, is like the premier online mapping service.
Oh, it really is. It's my Bible. Anytime I'm going to new body of water or
Wait,
I'm
which
just trying to the Navionics web app, this one.
Oh, yeah.
Fishing Navionics.
I think that's like one of 2 things I actually have saved on my. On
Wait,
my
why am I
browser.
not signed in? What the hell? Give me
Okay,
the real
can you
map.
guys see? Can you guys see my screen?
Oh, hang on. Add to stream.
There it is.
Oh, that looks
So-
good.
I'll give up a lake real quick. So this is a glacial body of water. You have steep drops that fall off pretty hard. And what I'm typically looking for is, it may not look like it, but there's a channel that swings in through here. And there's this big creek that flows in. And so early spring, when all that water basically and all the snow is racing into the lake, it all flows in this direction. And so this is one of the key areas that I'm targeting, is this big creek that flows into the lake. Well, then what happens is these fish, they get on the shallow flat, and it's not really shallow. It's still like 10, 12 foot. They have access to this deep water here. So they'll follow these contour changes and fall off into this deep water if they need to. But this area of the lake, even though it is the south end,
There's still warm
tends
water pushing.
to get warmer water. Right, exactly.
Yep.
I mean, is that like
here's-
a big river going in there, or is that just
It's just a
like
creek that flows in.
feeds into like? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a very big river at all. So I'll give you guys another one real quick. And this
Well, that's a
lake
tiny
doesn't
pond to the
exist
right.
anymore. Oh, dude, there's so many. Oh, yeah, this one. Well, here's a good example. Like, if we start to look at any of these boat launches, right? You look at a Caseville boat ramp. What you have are these rivers that flow into the lake. And this is where I was talking. I was catching these fish super shallow. You can launch in this river here, and these fish will stack up all in this section of the river, feeding on the bait fish, because you get this huge bait fish spawn that happens a lot earlier. And you get a bunch of bait fish pushing up in this river a lot earlier than you normally would on the main lake, because the water's warmer, and you can just fish the shallower water and catch fish in here, as opposed to like going out to the deep wintering holes out in the middle of the lake and struggling. So
Right, and that's a thing we really learned, probably several years ago now at this point, is those deeper wintering holes are great, and they would typically hold a number of fish, but it's not the kind of spot they want to be on when you're talking about that late season and early season transition, because it's got everything they want for depth, it's got stability in that water temp, but when we get those first nice warm days, all of a sudden it's like, okay, no, I have to swim like miles to get back up into the nice warmer water. And that's why those main lake points, like, and we see it year over year. Middle of summer, it's nice and hot. It's like, okay, everything's stable. I'm staying out here because it's nice and cold. But as it starts dropping down, they push back all those mainland points and stuff. So again, come back to that quick transition. Weather's changing rapidly. Okay, I'm going up there because it's like 20 degrees warmer than where I am right now, and that's going to feel great. And all the bait fish, like you said, are doing the same thing.
exactly.
What is your, like, I guess, primary forage for your smallmouth out there? I'm curious if it's like identical to what we have out here, or if it's going to vary a little bit. I'm assuming alewives must be much more prominent out your way.
Alewives are starting to make a little comeback. We had a huge king salmon population probably in the 80s and 90s, but what happened is all those salmon ate a bunch of the alewives, so they basically wiped out the alewife population entirely on Lake Huron. And so most of our fish are keyed in on shiners, gobies, and crawfish. Like, that's the hugest source, or
No, you're good.
The
You're
largest
fine.
source
You're
of
fine.
food for these bass.
We're all in New England, so you're good. We don't know how to talk over here.
There's also a ton of shad, tons and tons and tons of shad, and like things from small shad to like 6-inch gizzard shad. There's
Holy
everything.
crap.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always
ones,
think of shad, and especially gizzard shad, as like a southern thing when it's not.
So did I. So did I
It's just
until
not
we
New
went out
England.
there and we were casting crankbaits around this shallow island.
Yep.
And it was really flat calm, dude. Like super flat calm. And what you'd notice is you'd see like a bunch of bait fish start to flick on the surface, and then you'd see the smallmouth just wolf them. It was crazy. And then I realized, there must be shad in here. And then I talked to some guys that were netting for bait, and they're like, I've never seen as much shad as there is in here right now. So
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
For us, especially if you're talking like our glacial lakes, crawfish, yellow perch, and smelt, I would say are probably the top 3 things from the smallmouth eaters up here. But then, I mean, New Hampshire has, not even just New Hampshire, Mass, I think Maine too. They all have like extensive trout stocking programs. And they dump in millions of these fish from a variety of sizes, but they dump in quite a lot of fingerlings. So that's definitely on the menu. I mean, I've heard from close friends that fish like the lakes region of New Hampshire pretty specifically, or exclusively, I should say. And those are all those, 3,800 acre or bigger lakes that, they'll pull up a 3-pound smallmouth that ate an 8 or 9 inch trout. So they're still
That's
eating
crazy.
pretty good
I
on
mean,
those
you
fish
caught
up
that
there.
3.5 pound smallie last year, and it spit up an 8-inch smelt.
An 8-inch smelt. That was the most wild shit we've ever seen. That was in Vermont. But like, in New Hampshire, they say that the typical size of them is like 3.5 to 4 inches is the average, but still good amount you could find like up to 5 inches. When we go to Vermont, in one area in particular,
I hooked a 7-inch smelt randomly.
I
I don't
found
even remember what the hell it
that's
was on.
nuts.
blade bait.
Was it a blade bait?
Yeah, when you pulled it up, we couldn't believe it. We were like, that can't be a smelt.
was
That's
like,
the biggest smelt I've ever seen in my life.
What the hell is this thing?
Do your smelt getting like mega pods? Like,
Oh, dude.
okay.
Newfound
this
Lake.
is-
You go ahead. You first.
No, take it.
Okay, so Newfound Lake is one of my favorite places to fish here in New Hampshire. It's smallmouth only. I've heard rumors of a largemouth or two here, but it's pretty much just smallmouth and then like every kind of trout you can think of. And it's got some of the biggest balls of smelt I've ever seen in my life. And I think that's why it's so freaking hard to fish there in the fall, because they stack like you wouldn't imagine. There's one spot in particular I really enjoy fishing, and it drops out shallow down to like 35 to 40 feet. And you can follow that contour for a while. And I came out there. I've seen this multiple times. The smelt were stacked from 3 feet below the surface to within 2 feet of the bottom in 35 feet of water. So about 30 feet high. And this went on for like hundreds of feet. Like it just kept going. I couldn't get away from them. I'm like,
Billions.
I was like, I can't compete with this. What the hell am I trying to catch around this? Like I throw whatever I want down there. Small and be like, that guy's an idiot. Like, look at all this.
Do you guys go smelt dipping? Now this is kind of off topic, but like where they have these big, I don't even know what it is, like 6 poles, 6 lines, and you just dip it down, hook the smelt, and you lift it up. And anyways,
No, dip
it's a big
nets.
it's a hugely popular thing during the winter up here. You go smelt
Take like a
dipping. and-
PVC pipe and have a bunch of lines off it.
yeah,
Down, catch them, and bring them up. It's like, and you just
you just unhook
bait or
them, and
eat
yeah,
'em
that's
or whatever the hell you want to do with them.
I've heard they're good eating. No, New Hampshire actually has really strict rules against that. And I learned that when I went for my guide license, which, by the way, New Hampshire is the second most difficult state in the entire country to get your fishing guide license.
To do
for.
anything.
You have to do anything.
They're free, but don't do anything.
That's crazy. No, I ask about the smelt. So when we were down in Dale Hollow, there's a technique I'm sure most people know of called Demiki rigging. And my thought process on how you'd find fish that you Demiki rig is you just go fish like main lake points and islands. And the way these guys find Demiki rig fish, they idle around in the middle of the lake, right? Like literally, I talked to a guy at the boat ramp. He's like, we idle around in like over 80 foot of water, 100 foot of water, it doesn't matter. And you look for these massive shad balls. And then when you find these massive shad balls, you see the bass underneath the shad, and you can identify and say like, okay, they're 40 foot down. And then you never look at a place that's less than 40 foot of water, because if you're looking to Demiki rig, all those bass will like pattern around the same depth.
They're at that depth.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, dude, like I started thinking about the smelt thing, and on smelt fisheries, it sets up very similar. So we only have a handful of smelt fisheries left because most have been decimated by people doing smelt dipping. But what you can do is essentially the same thing with the Demiki rig. And I think that's why an A-rig fishes so effectively on smelt fisheries too. Because if you ever look at, like, this is another bait that I like to fish in the spring, especially early spring, is an Alabama rig. But it only works really effectively on fish that have really small bait fish. And I think the reason for that is because it imitates those smaller bait fish more effectively than like your perch and your whatever else, your shads and everything else like that. But anyway, sorry. I know we got really off topic there, but I was really interested by the smelt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, smelt is a huge focus of forage for fish up here. And Demiki rig, it has been my go-to now for the last 2 years in a lot of instances, especially like middle of the summer when those smallmouth are just suspended over like 100 feet. Yeah, 120 feet. And I'm starting to learn, specifically up on Winnie, those fish are, the smallmouth are a lot deeper than we thought. Mm-hmm. Like I thought catching them at like 65 feet was deep. And then come to find out people are pulling them off the bottom, or I should say the top, but in 90 feet, like on a hump that tops out at 90 feet. In the middle of summers, where guys, and even
they don't like the boat traffic either.
No,
they go as far away as they can. That's why I stay away from it too.
Yeah, Winnipesaukee, like imagine if you could run your washing machine like just full of water, no clothes, lid open, and you jumped in. Like that's what Winnipesaukee is like on Saturday and Sundays. The boat traffic is insane. It could be dead calm, not a breath of wind in the entire region.
Did you ever see that Trump boat parade down in Florida?
I'm not sure.
A couple years ago, there was like 10,000 boats, and they're all going together. Well, that's Winnie on like a Monday afternoon.
Dude, it's nuts. There's thousands of boats out there, and you get this 2 to 3 foot just washing machine chomp. It's not like boat wakes that you can find a direction and kind of like cut across them. No, it's just a washing machine chop that is a nightmare. There is no cutting across it nicely. With my 19.5 foot, skeeter with a 200, it's just fucking slap, the whole way across.
Just constant.
I must unplug myself.
No, I digress. I don't know what the hell we were talking about.
I was
smelt. Oh right, yeah, smelt. It's such a good forage to really target. I mean, they're everywhere, and I think a lot of people don't understand too just how widespread they are. Because they don't have to. There's plenty of smaller bodies of water all over New Hampshire, all over New England, really, that have them. Even in like places we've been that have, 100 acres, and they're just stacked with smelt. Mm-hmm. So it's I like your point with the Demiki rig and how effective it is around them.
That's crazy.
Demiki rig's cool.
It's so much fun.
Well, he started doing it, and I'm like, it's like ice fishing, kinda. And then he started catching them, and I was like, all right, give me that thing. Because I didn't want to do it. I wanted to fish a jig on the bottom, and he started catching them on that. I'm like, all right, I'll try. And he pulled up, I don't know, a couple 4-pounders and whatever.
That was that day in the snow in Vermont.
Yeah.
In December? Or
probably.
Yeah. I think it was the day you caught the 2 5s. No. That was like our...
I don't know.
Anyway.
But you were catching them, and I was like, give me that thing. So I dropped it down, saw one come up, looked at it, and then the line went back down. I was like, oh, come on. And then it came back up, and it just went, dunk. I'm like, oh, dude, that's how it works. Real,
dude, I've never caught one on it yet.
On a Demiki rig?
Not like intentionally Demiki rig dropping down to them. No, never.
What? Do you ice fish?
I hate ice fishing.
I do too, but have you done it? Have you ever jigged while ice fishing?
Yeah.
It's literally the same thing in the sense of like you're dropping it down, hold it anywhere from 5 to 10 feet over their head, and you can vary that, but like that 5 to 10 feet is like works 90% of the time, and just hold it. And it's wild. You see them come up off the bottom and they'll sniff it, and sometimes they'll just eat it, but they might come down and they'll come back up, and they'll do it a handful of times and just hold it. Very, very rarely will I sit there and like shimmy it as I bring it slowly away from them, like I would ice fishing, and he taught me that. And it does help sometimes. More often than not, you just drop it down, stop anywhere from 5 to 10 feet over the head, and just hold it. And they can't help themselves. You watch them just come up, and sometimes they'll shoot up on it. And it is every single bite we've gotten on it is violent. It feels like a jig, like a big largemouth just absolutely thumping a jig. And it's just a smallmouth coming up, looking at it, and just inhaling it in one pop. The whole rod just goes thunk.
I'm really going to have to try it because I know it's like a big deal right now. Like guys are smoking fish on it, especially with like understanding better electronics and how to find the bait fish.
Yep.
I think the eye-opening thing for me was on Dale Hollow. These guys literally saying, yeah, we drive around until we find bass under these mega pods of bait, and then you can just sit there and drop on them.
Yep. Isn't that where Dale Hollow, isn't that where like Demiki Rig really kind of got its...
Yeah, Cherokee and Cherokee, Dale Hollow, South Holston, that region of the country.
Yep. I'm trying to think. I mean, dude, you can just, a 3/8 ounce ball jig, like a Kitech. You know, it doesn't have to be anything special. I get my... What is it? I get lead-free bass jigs out of Massachusetts because we have so much, pretty much everywhere in New England now bans lead, and he makes some really good stuff. And he's got these, you know, like little eyes on the side, and it's just a little ball jig with a 90-degree line tie, which is critical. And they're cheap. Like I forget what hook he has on it, but it's a 2/0 hook, and like that
Pretty
works.
stout hook, huh?
It's a really stout hook, and that works for pretty much everything I do. My buddy Ryan Miller, he's in the chat here. He made up some new ones for me to try. I already stuck a few fish in those. They've been great. Yeah, Jamie Samatis, lead commies. And like the Magic Flick from Beast Coast is actually my go-to. And what I'll do is I'll cut the nose off, but I'll cut like a little, either like half cupped if I really care to put the time in, or I usually just take my scissors and cut like a V groove in. Yeah. So it sits up against the ball head real nice and, you know, relatively flush. I just drop that down and dead stick it. The Max Scent Flat Nose Minnow is another good one. The Zoom Baby Flukes, like those 2.5-inch flukes. Dude, I mean, you name it. There's so many good things that work on it. It works great.
That's awesome.
Jamie, stick an HTW on a Demiki. All right. I'll do it. Bet me. I'll do it.
Against the balls.
I'm so interested, man. Like, I think one of the big things for me this year is learning these new techniques and like learning things from other dudes and figuring out how to apply them to my style of fishing. Like that's one of my goals for this season. So discussions like this for me are like incredible.
So when you're talking like this early spring smallmouth fishing, what are your go-tos when you are out there for deep fish?
A blade bait. I fished at Beast Coast OW Sniper, half ounce. It's dumb good. Like it's so good.
Sir.
I think people believed I was getting paid or something when I was talking about it as much as I was, but that bait with like a small Ned rig style bait on the back, like a small cross style, crushes fish. Like when they won't bite a Ned rig, like an 1/8 ounce Ned, there's something about the way that bait presents itself and like the fast fall and just getting it in their face. That is such a killer bait. And then I'll actually, so this is kind of a weird one. I'll take a 1/2 or 3/4 ounce lipless crankbait. I'll cast it out and I'll let it sink to the bottom, and then I'll fish it like almost like you would a jig with like a small lift and drop, like a blade bait almost. But when that water is dirty and it's cold, they like that vibration and the sound from the lipless.
That makes sense. I throw in the lipless in cold water, but never for smallmouth, except I think the coldest I've thrown it for them has been in the fall, but you know, water was still like upper 50s, and then a few times in the spring, but that's when the water's been like over 50, or I should say at least 50. And you know, they're getting up all aggressively shallow everywhere, even in those deep glacial lakes, and they're running the flats, and they're staging. They're getting ready to spawn soon. And like a fire craw, smaller, the cotton cordell, the 1/2 ounce ones, you just rip that. I saw. This was, 4 or 5 years ago, fishing with my buddies. It's a guide up in New Hampshire. I owe the foundation of what I know about fishing glacial lakes or smallmouth to these two gentlemen, Travis and his dad, Jim. And we were up there. I forget. We were throwing everything, Ned rigs, tubes, jigs, blade baits, like you name it. And we could just see all these fish, and they were not interested. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to try something. He picks up that little 1/2 ounce fire craw cotton cordell. And I saw a smallmouth from 30, 40 feet away just turn on a dime and come flying out of nowhere for that thing. And they wouldn't look at anything else, and all of a sudden that little vibrating fire craw thing comes flying through, and they're like, oh, hell yeah, I'm all about that.
I want you in my belly.
The other, dude, one of my favorite techniques when the water starts to get into like the 50 to 55 degree range is you take a lipless and you cast it as far as you humanly can and then just wind just as fast as you can wind. And the second it hits the grass, you pop it and then just get back to winding. And it's like the most aggressive bite you can get all year from those fish. It's phenomenal.
We haven't done that in a while. Last time we did that was down at the Cape 4 years ago.
I think that was 5 years ago.
Was it really 5 years ago
I
now?
believe it was 5 years ago.
Stop! I'm getting old. Come on. Shit.
It was a while ago.
That was a while ago, but that was weird because
Caught more pickerel than fish bass that day.
Yeah, but
Oh yeah, you'll catch so many pike, but I don't care. Like, it's worth the smallmouth bites.
Yeah. That day in particular, we were actually doing it with a 3/4 ounce, that one knock tungsten, the Strike King Red Eye. And it was something about that because I didn't realize that I thought I grabbed a 1/2 ounce. I grabbed a 3/4 ounce and I started throwing. All of a sudden, caught a couple fish. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just burning this thing because it's getting down the grass so hard." But I mean, just I had a 7.2 heavy fast rod and 20-pound fluoro, and just bombing it as soon as it hits the water. Just okay, come on, get back here, and it hit a little grass, pop it, and just thump. It's like, all right, that's fun. Ryan Miller did ask, what weight lipless and favorite color?
I like to throw, so there's a Duo Realis. It's the G-Fix. It's this 3/4 ounce model. Really, really thin body. So if I'm dragging a lipless, that's going to be the one. And they have a color called Tool Perch or Tule Perch.
Yep.
And it looks like a goby. That's my favorite lipless for dragging and like bringing along the bottom. If I'm casting and retrieving, a Spro Uruku Shad 65 in the 1/2 ounce version. It's like a smaller size lipless crankbait, but you can just cast that thing forever.
I'll have to take a look at that. Well, here's a question for you. You ever throw a spider jig for your spring smallies?
Mm-mm.
Like, because you don't want to, or you just never have?
No, because I don't know where to get like a good spider jig trailer. Like, are you talking the ones with the plastic skirt on them?
Yeah, the twin-tailed hula grub. So like
with the
Yamamoto
spider
makes
head
some, Chompers makes some really good ones, and they're good value. There's a bunch of different brands out there, but I usually just stick to Chompers primarily, and then Yamamoto's. The Chompers are a little bit thicker and a little bit more hardy, so it presents itself just a little bit as a hardier meal.
Okay.
But that, like, there's something stupid about the simplicity of that bait that works exceptionally well for spring smallmouth. And I'll just throw it on a 3/8 ounce ball jig or a football jig. And the thing I learned with especially the non-lead versions, they don't really stand, but the smallmouth don't seem to really care. And I mean, even in the winter, like all through the winter and late fall, early spring, I mean, shit, I can catch fish on a spider jig literally all year round. It's weird. I don't understand it. It just works well, and it always has.
Is that a dog?
Yeah, my dogs are going nuts because my wife just got home. So give me just like 2 seconds here.
No, you're good, man. Well, I know. I'm trying to think. But yeah, there you go. Gordy's Crazy Hick Baits makes a killer version too. They do, and he's got some really, really good colors on that too. But
is she looking at you? She's staring at you.
She's judging you, isn't she?
Talking to you.
No, but I haven't thrown a hula grub or a spider jig at all. No. That's like such an old school bait, but I know, like, I've heard of guys like smoking them on it. It
is one of my absolute go-tos every spring without fail. Like, we'll be out there and every spring I want to try something new and to do something different.
It's always that and tube.
Yeah, and we'll get our teeth kicked in for a few hours, and I'll look at him like, fuck it, I'm doing it. And he's like, spider jig? I'm like, yep. And like, before you know it, there's bass in the boat. It works insanely well.
What about that fat Ica?
That is something we haven't talked about because I've had several people message me about it that are like, you really should be throwing that. And I haven't done it yet. And I'm like, okay, I won't say anything yet.
I've thrown it like this much, and I've had a little bit of success, but I've just never been like, this is the deal right now. Like, this is what I have to be throwing.
I've heard it is phenomenal, especially in that cold water for the smallmouth. And honestly, you fish it the same, I guess, like any other jig from what people have told me. But that's what I do with my spider jig. I fish my spider jig the same as any Beast Coast jig. You know, I just get it down there. And I think the benefit of having that 3/8 ounce, especially with like a non-lead or non-tungsten, you know, like the tin bismuth heads.
Yeah.
You get a slightly bigger profile on the head, but it's, you know, it's still 3/8 ounce, but you get a much bigger head profile. So it has more displacement. So it helps it fall even slower than say a 3/8 ounce tungsten head, which has like
Yeah.
no profile to it and it's just going to kind of shoot right through the water. Neither one of them is going to stand, but it just kind of rolls over. I don't know. It's that action, a little bit of the hula skirt, but mostly the twin tails that really get their attention. And I throw 2 colors. Almost exclusively in the spring. Black of the blue flake, and then watermelon with a red and black flake for smallmouth. I don't know what it is about that color
Really?
with smallmouth in the spring, but it is like, it's not even close to, or sorry,
Ooh,
no
that
other
looks
color is
good.
even close. Which one? Yeah. He's looking at the fat Ica. But yeah,
I like that.
watermelon with a red and black flake is like by far and large my number 1 producing bait for cold water smallmouth. And I'll even throw that down in like 45 feet of water. Just works well.
I don't have the patience. I'll be honest. For me, like fishing that deep, I can drop shot it. I can, throw a heavy jig. But when I got to start waiting for something to get down there, I'm like, oh, there's some fish shallow somewhere. Like,
Yeah, sometimes,
sometimes you don't get that here though. You gotta be deep. It's you'll learn patience.
Well,
yeah.
case in point, we went to one of our favorite spots in Vermont late last year, specifically for smallmouth. At that point, water dropped down to 46, I think we had found that day. Maybe 45, 46, somewhere around there.
I don't know what day you're talking about.
But we were fishing almost exclusively like 40 feet and deeper. And the wind was ripping. It was stupid
past year?
getting me out there. Yeah, we were out there with Tim.
Oh yeah.
And like, okay, if the wind's ripping hard and we're fishing that deep, I'm throwing half ounce exclusively because even that takes a little while to get down there and doesn't always want to stay in the bottom. Yeah, and he picks up a 3/8 and he proceeds to absolutely wax us on it, which it's one of those weird things where on the surface it doesn't make any sense because it's not like he was catching him on the fall or right after it hit bottom. It was like 15 to 30 seconds after it hit bottom and he'd already imparted movement into it. So at that point, it's like, how on earth could an eighth of an ounce make a difference in that case when you're already in the bottom? But it can. And
Took forever to get down to like 45, 50 feet though.
All right, who wants to have a conversation while I wait for this?
Letting line out and just like, okay, I'll wait.
I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed, so this is really specifically, I've noticed it for summer smallmouth and late fall smallmouth, is like the rate of fall in the overall jig head size and the impact that it has on these fish biting. So like for me, when I first noticed it, I was fishing a 1/4 ounce drop shot weight and my buddy was throwing a 3/8 and I was getting considerably more bites than he was getting, right? Just because that lighter weight like causes that bait to just have different action or like more action naturally from the current that's flowing over the lake, right? And then this past season, rate of fall made a huge difference in catching late fall fish. We used to throw a 3/32, like a standard hair jig, your 3/32 ounce hair jig. Well, essentially the key was like those fish had to see it come through the water column, and then once it got on bottom and you dragged it, that bait kind of hovered. And that was like our big difference maker. That was the reason we caught some fish that we otherwise wouldn't.
Instead of punching down through the grass and getting lost.
Instead of,
They can see it fall and then it'll sit there and they can be like, okay, I want to eat that. Just give me like a minute.
Yeah, exactly. So like, especially when the bite is really slow and you got a slow drag, that's where I've noticed like those small differences in weight make like a massive difference.
Yep, I agree.
We definitely noticed that this year, like on more than like 10 occasions.
Both smallmouth and largemouth, deep and shallow. Like it made it more of that was focused on the kind of structure we're fishing around, especially vegetation. And
vegetation played huge this year.
Yeah, well, those fish are just fickle bastards. And some days, you throw a half-ounce jig, and which is like not bad, but sometimes can be a little heavy when you're fishing like 8 feet of water or less because it's going to come crashing down fast. But we were finding that half ounce made a big difference when you just kiss the very, very outside of that grass. It would kind of like hit and like collapse everything and then kind of like slow down as it got cushioned and then tumble out. And just that different cadence in the way it grabbed and hooked and then like tanked out of it. We were crushing them on it. And then same deal.
It wasn't like a bunch of small fish either.
No, dude, we caught a lot of big fish this year doing that.
Like I'm just saying in one day when we went out with Dean.
That was stupid. How many fish did we catch that day?
Probably 50, 60 fish, but they were all like high 3s to mid 4s.
Yeah, and we had 23 pounds on our best 5.
I think so.
So not like an incredibly stellar day, but a good day nonetheless.
Right.
Yeah, that was a fun day. We guided a client up in Vermont, and I was like, oh, he's like, I just want to beat my PB large. He beat it twice. It was a good day.
That was
we just
awesome.
waxed him
seeing
on
him
jigs
catch
all
that.
day. Which is so there's 2 questions I want to ask more specific to the early spring fishing for smallmouth. But before I do it, I did see from Footy Fan. He's talking about what makes the Beast Coast open water jig so effective. I want your opinion first. And actually, before you do that, how long have you been fishing those jigs now?
Since 2 years ago, whenever he came out with the first run of the Marabou hybrid jig.
Yes.
The Hustler.
That was when I picked up some and I started fishing with it and playing with
before
it.
that.
No, they have we have a ton of them. The open water sniper, but it's a hybrid. It's a regular open water sniper. It's got a little.
I'm sorry.
Marabou
Yes.
on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know what. Yep.
Yeah. So I picked some up when he came out with those just because I had caught so many fish on like a little hair jig. What I think makes it effective is actually the rate of fall, right? Because what you don't realize until you get your hands on is it's a very small profile bait.
Yep.
Like this is a micro jig. So it's got a 2-aught hook in it. And so it's a small profile, but it falls extremely fast. So what we realized is you could throw it in the same spots you were throwing the standard Ned rig. And anywhere that you have hard bottom, that bait will take and present your lure like at a 45-degree angle because the line tie on the head and the way that bait comes through the water, and because it falls super fast as a small profile, you trigger a lot of bites that I am convinced won't bite like a lighter Ned rig floating through the water. They won't bite like a bigger jig with a big profile coming through the water. It's like the perfect combination for me of a small profile that falls fast, but then helps you maintain bottom contact in these hard bottom areas. I'm not like a bait guy where it's like, it has to be, this bait is special, but there is something about that bait that I was really shocked about when I started catching fish on it and realized like, especially those MB colors, the ones where you have just the lighter skirt, those ones are 22 really,
strand
really special.
Skirt versus the standard 44 strand.
We absolutely killed it on Champlain this year with that.
Do we that
102 fish day?
102 fish that one day, 226 fish over 3 full days, and then like a 4-hour day on our last day there. And out of those, I honest to God think 175 of them came on sniper jigs alone. They just wouldn't stop.
They just bite it.
It's nuts.
You throw it in, you just wait for the bite. It's like, when's it coming? It's coming. It's coming. Oh, there it is. It was
That's
crazy.
right too.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. And a lot of that with that really fast fall. This is something I learned years ago because jig fishing, really like the second thing that I wanted to learn when I got out of, fishing with my dad. He only ever taught me Texas rig. That was it. And that's all I ever knew until I was like about 21 years old. And then I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this and just beating the bank. I want to learn more. So crankbaiting was like, okay, well, that's easy. I just burn and turn and just keep casting and repeat. And then I was like, oh, let's get into jigs. And I fished them more. I talked to more people. I learned that. And this, Carl, I saw your question. This is kind of double answer questions here. But I found that half ounce tends to be better more often than not because you get that reactionary bite. Yeah, you get that 3/8 ounce. It's a slower fall with a bigger presentation, but you almost give them too much time to think about it. And if it's not quite the right presentation, whether it be color or your trailer choice, whatever, then you give them a little too much time to think about it. They're like, no, I'm not going to do it. Versus that half ounce, smaller profile, a little bit more streamlined, and then the heavy in the head with it all being that tungsten resin, it just kind of bombs right by them. So they don't have much to think. They just instant reactionary bite. And we've seen that a lot since we started throwing the crap out of those. And that shorter skirt plays a huge role too, we found. Because there was that day Andrew was just talking about, we were up in Vermont, and I mean, anywhere in Vermont, I'm sure it's the same for you. There's zebra mussels everywhere up there. So
started using cheaper jigs because we didn't want to lose them because there's so many rocks in there too. And I grabbed the Strike King ones.
Yeah, and then I remember I picked up Strike King too. I don't know what. I think you were still. Maybe I'm thinking of a different day. There was one day you were.
I was trimming like an inch off the skirt.
That's what it was. And you didn't tell me. And then I was
Sorry.
like, I picked up a Strike King. I'm like, why am I not getting bit anymore? Because we were all we lost like 20 sniper jigs that day. And we were letting our buddy Dean fish them at that point because he was paying to be with us for the day. I was like, just use them. I don't care. I'll get them replenished.
Yeah.
And Andrew's like, he's still cracking them. I'm not getting anything. I'm like, I'm literally throwing the same trailer and jig as you. What'd you do different? He's like, I cut the skirt to match the sniper. I'm like, son of a bitch. So get my scissors out, hold up. Dean, give me your sniper. And I looked up and, all right, cut that. And immediately started getting bit. So that's another big thing, having that slightly shorter skirt. And I think it is a different material than your standard skirt material, at least a few strands in there.
It feels like it can move a lot easier. Like it's not as stiff or like...
It's more supple.
Right, yeah.
There's just not as much. I think like the biggest key is there's not as much skirt material. So it's like so natural. It just naturally wants to move and flow, right?
Almost like it's breathing, but it's not like...
The best is when the best is once you've caught a bunch of fish and the skirt like starts to fall off a little bit because your fish have ripped at it. That's when it seems to catch the most fish.
Uh-huh.
Yep. I've got like even more questions, but I'm curious because a lot of what we found over the last few years, when people talk about smallmouth fishing in general, more often than not, you're going really light line. But when we're fishing a lot of these jigs and stuff, we found it almost doesn't matter more often than not. So I'm curious, with you out there in your area, what you've been finding, especially in cold water conditions, are you finding line diameter matters more often than not or less often?
For rate of fall only, really.
Okay.
Like I had it happen this past year. We were fishing in like 35 foot of water with that OWB sniper. And my buddy was fishing the Kitech version of like a small finesse jig.
Yeah.
And, he had 10-pound test line fluorocarbon. I had 8, and my jig was falling a lot faster. And I noticed that he was getting more bites, and I think it has to do like the biggest misconception. Okay, I'm fishing a 1/2 ounce. My buddy's fishing a 3/8. Why is he necessarily always getting more bites on the 3/8 versus my half? Right? There's so many factors that you can consider into slowing down that 1/2 ounce jig, like line diameter and everything. But to answer your question, for the most part, almost always no. Like there's almost always no difference in line diameter, except for that like one instance where I'm like, okay, like it slowed the jig down just enough to make a difference. So,
yeah,
yeah.
That's why I used to throw jerk baits on 15-pound fluoro.
It works. Yeah, but well, most of the time you're doing that too. It's a little bit warmer, so you don't even get that thing a chance to sit there. So line diameter is kind of irrelevant at that point, like, especially at that point.
There's been a couple times where it was really cold water, but
why am I still pulling up weeds? 15-pound line.
these fish are down there though.
They're
always on top.
One more thing when we start talking about cold water fishing, right? And you guys talking about weeds made me think of this. If I'm not fishing, like if I'm not focused on warmer water areas, finding some sort of cover is super, super critical, whether that's deep water, whether it's shallow water. Like cover holds heat and cover has an environment that naturally wants to live around it. So like, I don't know if you guys have found this to be true, but anywhere that I'm fishing in early spring, there has to be some sort of cover, whether that's wood or grass or rock. Like I'm not just fishing do nothing areas.
Oh yeah.
During the spring.
Like, I mean, we had one day this past year that we caught a substantial amount of big largemouth, and we were on a very shallow flat, but there was still, it wasn't like nothing. It was an old lily pad, like stems, and they were still up, but there was no lily pads on them.
Yeah, no, no, you're spot on. They're just all really shallow. So it's all lily pad stalks. They die and they kind of fold over, but this is so shallow. They didn't really fold completely over. They're just kind of like leaned on their sides a little bit. Unlike other areas we fish where like they're just
folded flat on the ground. Like these were still like kind of up. It was only maybe
2 feet,
2 to 3.5 feet max, and we killed it in there.
Yeah,
like 27 pounds.
We did one of our best 5 largies, which was fun. Yeah. Not bad for Massachusetts.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
But for smallmouth, like, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. When I think of the spots that we focus on early in the spring, our most productive spots is that area where you've got that riprap and it's a mixture of, hard packed bottom sand to riprap with some bigger boulders. It's just got a variety of structure, and they're not always hiding in the boulders. Sometimes you see them just kind of riding that line right along the edge where the sand meets all that riprap rock. It's all that fist-sized kind of chunky rock stuff. If you can find also, especially in these deeper, clear glacial lakes,
Those dark patches.
the dark patches, all the vegetation particulate that just kind of builds up and dies, and you get beautiful sand, and there's this big black circle in the middle of nothing. Like those are always
Those
key
have
too.
been so good to us over the years.
Yep, and again, even early in the spring, because it just provides them a really, really good ambush point. So I think that's a thing. I'm glad you brought this up that other people may not think of when I feel like a less experienced angler, when they think structure, they're thinking like something very definitive, a downed tree, a giant boulder. That doesn't have to be the case. It's just something that differentiates itself from your just flat sandy bottom. It could be that little dark patch of the particulate that's all built up. It could just be a little bit of grass. Could just be a little, fist-sized.
It could be a hard
rock
spot
pile.
on the bottom, right? Like
Shred.
Jamie, knock it off.
But hard spots, dude, dark bottom is so overlooked, and it's like one of those things you don't talk about unless you like intentionally make it a point to think about. But a lot of our largemouth, and this happens for smallmouth too, get on these dark spots, especially on clean bodies of water. And I think it warms up faster, or there's like more more creatures and critters there. Like, but you can look Google Maps.
It's like wearing like a white t-shirt compared to a black t-shirt. Like, what's going to warm up faster? Are you going to want to wear a black t-shirt out when it's 95 degrees out? I don't think so.
No, you're not wrong.
You wear a white t-shirt, you're going to be a hell of a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
There was another question I wanted to ask you, and it's gone. Okay, well, let's think about it this way, because we've talked a lot about like kind of immediate ice out, and then like when they're much more aggressive. What about that kind of in between time where they're working in that transitional mode where you're talking mid 40s to low 50s? I would say even like 45 to 50, because they're kind of like hovering in between deep water and mega shallow, at least especially up here in New England. I think about a couple of our key glacial lakes, and it's got everything you can imagine that you'd want to fish at every single incremental foot of depth. And you've got like these key staging areas where coming out of the winter, in most cases, you'll find them out deep still. But those steep banks, mainland points, the whole 9 yards, they're still closer to the mainland. Then they move up, and they're going to come out of that 45, 50-foot hole. They're going to come up, and they're going to live in like 10 to 20, that mid-depth range, which is just kind of like this weird middle no man's land that for years, I really struggled with targeting. That was something we worked on hard the last 2 years to better understand what works well in that. Then, once they get from 10 feet and shallower, it's not always easy, but it becomes a lot easier, especially as you're getting closer and closer to spawn. But when they're in that weird transition, 45 to 50 degrees, and they're kind of hovering in that 10 to 20 foot range, what are your go-tos for there? Like, what are you looking for? How are you going to tackle them in that case?
So that is like St. Clair to the definition of a T, right? Like St. Clair is a pretty shallow body of water. You have moderately deep water, like 20. I'm going to kind of break it down. So you have like moderately deep water, which is like 25 foot to 20 foot of water. Then you have mid depth, which is like 15 to 10. And then you have shallow, which is 10 and less.
Yep.
And what you have happened is early spring, these fish will push into like no water at all, but really, really shallow. Then they'll spread out over that like 10, I would say 8 to 15 foot range. That's when I'm going to put that trolling motor on like 6 or 7 and just try to cover the most high percentage areas I possibly can and look for the wolf pack. Because even though they're kind of weird, you can still find like the wolf pack of fish, and that's when I'm buzzing water. So that's when I'm throwing like an A-rig. That's when I throw a jerk bait. That's when I start to throw that lipless and like start winding that bait, or like just a small 3.5-inch swim bait. Just to locate where these fish are at. So I'm just going to target as many high percentage areas as I possibly can and not stop until I find a bite. And then when I catch one, I'm sitting there and I'm milking it for everything it's worth. But
I've watched a lot of videos about St. Clair, and yeah, those guys that are out there, they're literally just working like one depth all day long. and it's like just that one area, and that area could be huge, but they're working it all day long just to get a few bites.
Yeah,
Like
it's the right kind of bites.
Zona and what's his name? Jordan Lee.
Oh, was that the day they caught the sturgeon?
Yeah, he hooked on the sturgeon. There was like 15, 20 boats within like football field, and they were all doing the same thing, drifting the same thing. It's crazy.
Like that's my biggest thing that time of year, man. It's like when they get funky, I just have to locate one, and then I feel like I can start to put a pattern together. Because the biggest thing in the spring for me is like being able to pattern bass, because it feels like whether it's ice out, whether it's the funk, even though the funk sucks, you can sort of pattern fish around an area and kind of get an idea of what you can be running. So that's like my biggest thing is just cover water in the spring.
Yep. That's what we have found our fair share of many a times.
Yeah, until you find that one spot, and it's just like, okay, game on.
Oh, yeah. like you said,
then
you find the wolf pack, it's fucking lights out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ton of fun. That's still an area of mine that I want to continue to focus on, specifically for smallmouth, though I still think our plan for this year is more largemouth centered. I think there'd be a happier balance tackling largemouth versus smallmouth, but we're still both chasing an 8-pound largemouth. So,
well, I think the other thing too, like smallmouth get really funky, like especially on glacial lakes where there's not a whole lot of middle ground. It's like shallow or deep, and like there's only a very little bit of middle ground. It can be really tough when they're not shallow or deep and they're just kind of roaming and nomadic. And so like for me, if they're not there, like I'm going to pack up and go to a different lake, because I just don't, and I'm fishing small glacial lakes.
Like how small is small to you?
Like 500 to 800 acres. Like there's 3 or 4 different spots that I can hit on that lake and have confidence they're going to be there. And if I'm not catching them, like they're just not there that day, I'll like pack up and go 10 miles down the road and hit another 500 to 800 acre lake.
I mean, some of the biggest fish I've ever caught have been out of like 30 to 50 acre lake, little ponds.
Yeah.
Smallies and largies.
That's us too. We have massive fish that live in some relatively small bodies of water.
Mm-hmm.
But like they fish pretty small. So like on glacial lakes, that's why largemouth are fun in the spring, because you can figure out something to catch them on. But like glacial lake smallmouth in the spring can be really, really, really tough.
Yes, they can. I've had my teeth kicked in by those fish up there in the glacial lakes.
And then when you find them, dude, it's like you're the king, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I can. Yeah. I can think back to very specific examples of that on Newfound Lake. That's a lake that everybody told me when I first wanted to literally understand deep water smallmouth and just get better at smallmouth in general. Because anything I had caught prior to that, now this is 12 years ago when I really started fishing up there, maybe 13 years ago, something like that, was they're like, I mean, Newfound's a great place. It's got big smallmouth. It's just tough as nails because, like you just said, it's just either really shallow or really deep. There's very little in between. So, but I really wanted to figure it out. I was like, if I can figure it out in that lake, I should be able to figure them out anywhere. And that has worked pretty well for me over the years. But yeah, man, there's been quite a few times I've gone up there and skunked, but then all of a sudden you figure out that one stretch and you start to kind of understand the pattern of behavior. And you can understand, okay, I know other places on this lake that have this similar kind of setup, and I should be able to repeat that. Granted, there's only like 3 places in the lake that you can repeat that, but then all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, all 3 of those places had fish. It was great. There's only 3 places I can catch them, but that it's something super satisfying about that, where you're just beating the piss out of a lake for 2 miles and nothing, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, okay, there's a nice one. And the next cast, you hook in another one. A couple casts later, you hook another one. It's like, okay, that was worth the effort the whole way.
Exactly, dude. It's the same story here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. We fish, I mean,
smallmouth or smallmouth?
That's what I was going to say. Smallmouth or smallmouth wherever you go across the country. And then when you start to look at glacial lakes versus glacial lakes, they fish so much the same.
Mm-hmm.
Even Dale Hollow, like winter, early spring smallmouth, we were like, okay, this area should be good. And we pull up to it and we're like, oh, yeah, well, it would have been good at home. And it's good here too. Like,
nice.
Bass is a bass is a bass.
Right.
Yep.
Except for those Florida strains.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh man. Well, you know what? It's already been an hour and 20 minutes. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Either ask us or maybe you saw something in the chat you wanted to discuss. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We usually are doing anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half on these shows lately, so I don't want to hold you up too long.
What are some of your big plans for this year as far as like your fishing adventures are going to take you? Do you guys have anything big happening this season?
We got the Champlain.
Champlain multiple times. A lot of Champlain this year. Candlewood. Go down and fish with Derek, the owner of Beast Coast.
That'll be sweet.
Maine.
What does Candlewood fish like? It's a mixed lake, right? But is it big?
Once. I caught one fish.
It is pretty big. I think it's, what is it, 5,000 acres, something like that. Alewife is what are primarily found in there for the forage. So it's a little bit different. They're like river fish down there. It's weird. Like, I mean, what was that?
Yeah, no, you're right.
4.1 pound smallmouth that you caught that was 24 inches long?
24 inch, 4 point something, yeah.
Dude, he hooked that thing, and this was January 2nd. Not last year, the year before. So almost just about 2 years ago. And he hooks it, and it comes up, we're like, holy shit, he's got a 6. And he gets it, like, all we can see is the length, and he flips it, we can see the rest of the belly. We're like, where'd the rest of it go?
So it's just gone. The rest of it's gone.
But the only problem, it's weird. It used to be like 4 different townships, and they flooded the place. And that's a weird story in of itself. They built a dam. They made a hydroelectric dam, but they took water from the river and pump it into the lake to fill it, and then the water that discharges out is what they generate electricity from. It's kind of weird from everything else I know about dams, but it works. Mainstream fishing, Candlewood in Connecticut.
Wait, what the hell? What do they do?
They built the dam, and then they, like, right next to the river, and then they pumped the water from the river in to fill the lake, and then by the time it filled, it had a lot more output from it, so they generate electricity from that instead of just, the natural current of the river. I don't know if there's any other place that does it like that. It's a very unique thing. But anyway.
Good on you, Connecticut.
That's crazy.
There's so much structure. There's like, it's all steep, crazy hills. There's all sorts of ledges, a lot of rock,
houses.
Really good vegetation. There's legitimate houses, bridges, roads,
everything, churches. What do you want to fish for?
Tractors, trucks. We were fishing the first time you and I were there, right? And we were on Mega 360. You could see the whole foundation of a house and then the round foundation for the old barn silo. And you could literally see the front step. So we're like casting out, and we're like, I'm pretty sure I'm on this person's like literal front step of their house. We used to be down there. Mm-hmm. And we may have lost 20 jigs in that foundation, but it was still fun.
Mail's here.
Yeah.
And it's wild. And it's like deep, but not crazy deep. I want to say like 50 feet is kind of the average. I could be wrong. You know what? I'm going to look it up because I'm really curious. But it's just like, it's all these fingers. And there's a crazy variety of structure. And there's big largemouth and really big smallmouth down there.
I was always curious. So Derek came out with that jig that has like the double wide weed guard that's super heavy. He's got to have a reason that he came out with that for like his style of fishing. I want to know like what he's flipping it in that he needs a weed guard like that. Because that thing is amazing.
Candlewood has some thick vegetation. And it's kind of similar to Champlain and a lot of other places I've seen in Vermont, where you get like this ring of vegetation from like after about the first 5 feet of shore, it's nothing. And then the vegetation starts and it goes until about like 10 feet deep in water. And then it just ends in this wall. But it is some of the thickest shit you've ever seen. And Candlewood has a lot of the same stuff, but they're also really close to the Connecticut River, and that's got a lot of really, really good grass. But I think he was originally intending that for like some of the southern guys. I've used those jigs a few times, and they are phenomenal.
Thicker than a Snicker.
Thicker than a Snicker. Thanks, Jason.
Oh, you guys are all funny.
So I was wrong. Candlewood is actually shallower than I thought. It barely even hits 50. In a lot of places,
40
it's like,
would probably be average.
Yeah.
It's literally all 40, 39, 40, 40, 39.
Yeah.
37.
I was looking for a 50. Even that hole, it only gets down to 49. Nope, 48. So yeah, it's cool because there's 1,000 different ways you can fish it. There's every imaginable kind of structure you can think of between vegetation, trees, current, like legit old structure. It's a really unique lake. I enjoy fishing there a lot.
That's sweet.
Aside from those places, I want to go to Maine a lot this year because we barely scratched the surface for that state.
How far is
actually-
Maine from you guys?
I mean, we can get to
An
the
hour to
border
the
in like
border?
an hour.
Yeah. And then what is Little Sebago?
3 hours.
Is that really 3 hours?
Yeah, it's 3 hours.
God damn it.
Well, it took me and Kristen 3 hours to get there, and it'll probably take like an hour and 45 with you.
Damn right. I told my mother
And she doesn't
85
drive
wherever I
slow
go.
either.
People were like, should we towing that fast? But like, there's no speed rating on my trailer tires. Look as fast as I want.
Yeah, but there's a rubber limit though, and you're running low.
Yeah, I got to replace those tires this spring. Like, that's what I love about my new Tundra. Like even going up over the Green Mountains from my house, going up to Lake Champlain, we're going up the highway, and there's like a line of cars, and I was like, rap,
I just
85
look
with my
back
boat.
to see headlights. I'm like, did you just pass all those?
I
'Cause
sure
I'm
did.
sitting there like this the whole time, like on my phone.
He's on his phone. Everywhere we go. There's one specific thing I want to get done this year. I don't even think we talked about in our goals. Is I want to get a 20-pound bag out of every state in New England. And like from a random body of water. We're gonna like, okay, wake up or Saturday night before we go fishing Sunday. It's like, let's pick some random place we've never been to. And just tackle it like that. I just want to try and really utilize the skills that we have just been trying to hone over these last few years and really test ourselves. And
What
more
states
often
is
than
that?
not. So it would be Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Mass, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So the real pain in the ass is going to be Rhode
Rhode
Island
Island's gonna suck.
because there's almost no options out there. Anywhere else, we've got a multitude of options. But Rhode Island, there's only a handful of places you can go, especially in the summer, that you can even get a bass boat into. One, if they have the access, and two, they don't have motor restrictions. But then three, it's usually locked to residents only, so you can't even touch it during the summer. So like the Rhode Island, that's actually going to be challenging because there's only going to be a handful of spots we can choose from.
I know we can do it in New Hampshire. I know we can do it in Vermont. And I know we can do it in Maine.
I feel
and
like you could
Mass.
throw a stone and hit 20 different ponds in Maine. You could catch a 20-pound bag in, so I'm not really worried about that.
like in the same day.
Yeah, the same day. Oh,
Maine is one of those places I've always wanted to go. I like wanted to go to Maine just because it feels very untapped, right?
I mean, for bass fishing, it kind of is. I mean,
yeah, because there's not that many people up there. and
So many people up there that trout fish. Like northern Maine, they don't even care about bass. They just kill them. Like they catch them and they kill them.
Yeah.
Like they don't want them because they're just an invasive species that are taking over, eating all their trout. So, which if I was an avid trout fisherman, I'd probably feel the same way. But
Right.
I'm glad that they eat your trout because they get huge. So it's like, quit killing my bass. But yeah, Maine has some high potential for some very, very large fish.
Gordy beat me to it before I could even say it. But yeah, Maine is, there's just like thousands of different bodies of water, and the majority of them have access that you can put a boat in. There's like very little restrictions up there, so it's nice. And there's not as many people that go up there because a lot of it is fairly remote. But if you ever come to Maine, my friend Gordy here, 603 Wild, the Belgrade area, like I can't even remember the names of all of them, but if you set yourself up like right in the middle of it, literally any of those bodies of water, and you've got like a dozen to pick from that are all within 5 minutes of each other, they all are phenomenal bodies of water. And I've been told that by a number of different people. You just can't go wrong. I don't think there's a single bad lake in that state
could probably
except for
travel-
Sebago.
From one boat launch, probably travel 5 to 10 minutes and be at another lake that is equally or better than the one you just fished. Like, it's crazy.
I tell you what,
Maine actually sucks. Don't go.
all right, we have to plan this. The free fishing weekend in Maine, we have to go to Josh's in-laws camp. So that's when they do their tournament. We got to take the SSPOS out.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we can borrow somebody's kayak. So, case in point, one of our really good friends, his father-in-law bought a camp up in Maine, and he got married in 2018. Trying to think.
Long ago?
Yeah, dude, that's the last time I went up fishing there. So at that point, Tim, his father-in-law, had owned the camp for 3 years, I think. The smallest largemouth to get on their top 10 board was 6 pounds 10 ounces, and the leader on it was 7 pounds 15 ounces.
Wow.
These are guys that just literally throw Senkos. That's all they do. Like they're just that's it. They've got these little kayaks. They got like 1 or 2 ugly sticks, and they just sling Senkos.
I can't wait to see what they're gonna do to like a citizen or something. Like,
Oh, what? yeah, when I got there in 2018, we didn't even know what citizens were, but I'm out there with like a 6-inch Kitech, like frothing at the mouth. I'm like, I can't wait to show these bass what a real fucking thing looks like.
Or just frogging up there. Oh,
yeah, we're going up there. Okay.
throwing the rat. We should night fish it.
Oh yeah. Oh. It's only a 4-hour ride. It's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I digress. Anyway, Ben, what are your plans for this summer? We've talked for 20
I have
minutes.
none.
None.
I'm just like,
Come to
no,
Maine.
just fish. No, my big thing is,
No.
so we have 2 kids now, so it's like just fish whenever I can get out.
Yep.
So
Sorry,
I don't know.
guys.
I don't have any like real plans necessarily. Just go out and catch fish.
Yep. No,
There,
enjoy
I
the
might
time
fish a
with the kids when
tournament
you
or
can.
two, but yeah, just really like enjoying the time with them. I guess actually, Alex and Caleb are coming up. Alex Rudd and Caleb Bell, they're coming up in May, and we're gonna fish up north with families for a weekend. But other than
Nice.
that,
That'd be
nothing.
fun.
Just hanging
Dude,
out.
I would kill to get out your way.
Oh yeah.
You got a big enough
Michigan-
boat. If we fly out there, can you
Michigan's
take us out
amazing.
fishing?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah,
You want to go?
I got vacation.
We'll go
time.
catch
We
'em.
should
I
go.
have some vacation time.
If we're gonna get a
We'll go to
25
St.
pound limit.
Huh? I'll get
Yeah.
fired. Whatever. I'll
Wait,
get fired.
what were you about to say? We can go where?
I said we could go to St. Clair in the spring and catch like hundreds. St. Clair in the spring. So it's like a lot of people think St. Clair in the spring sucks because it's it's the craziest, busiest place I've ever been. But when you land on a school of fish, it's like 4 and 5 pounders for literal hours. We found a spot and we caught fish for like 45 minutes, literally every cast. And then I called my buddy and I'm like, hey, you guys better get over here. So they came over and they sat their boat and casted at the same school and we just caught fish next to each other.
That's
It was
sick.
incredible. It was incredible.
No, they stacked up there every year like that.
I want to go.
For the most part, yeah, like it's
I mean, probably
flotilla
not.
boats.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no, they're not in St. Clair anymore. Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
But
Dude,
yeah,
I
it's
want to
fun.
go. If I can make that happen, I would 110% take you up on that offer.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you guys
Well, I'm
want to come to
going-
Michigan,
Ooh, actually, you know what? I might be going to Michigan.
Oh yeah, when are you doing that? If you go out of state with your girlfriend for the first time and plan a fishing trip around that, it's
And it's a funeral. If you're watching this,
two
sorry,
funerals
babe,
if
I
you
might go
plan
fishing
this.
for like a couple hours. Only half a day.
yeah,
12
only half
hours,
a day,
right?
12 hours.
Exactly.
Just waiting for my phone to blow up.
We're really bad influence.
Sorry.
I love
Yeah, I
it.
might be out there. I don't know. I'm probably not going to be able to fish though, which is fine. Circumstances.
It's fine. It's fine. It's really not fine.
It's no.
Oh, there she is.
What'd you say?
I appreciate you watching. Thank you. I love you.
I want to know what she said. Come on, you slow ass phone. Hurry up. Was it a good or bad? That's all you got to say. You don't have to read the thing.
It's just a
out.
laughing face, is all it is.
She said, I literally don't even care. Do it. I love you.
Okay,
Oh.
we're coming out.
I literally have the best girlfriend on the face of the planet. So, I mean,
That's funny.
someone brought a kitty to the dispensary. It's
Okay.
nothing.
Totally out of left field there.
Yeah, sorry. My bad.
I can't answer this. Beast Coast will not be at the New Hampshire Outdoor Expo next month, unfortunately. Couldn't make it work out. So there's that. But, all right, tell you what. I think now is as good a time as any to wrap it up. Ben, greatly appreciate you coming on and joining us again,
Yes.
and hopefully we can
Thank
have you
you,
again.
guys.
You know, at some point we can jump into your show or whatever. We could talk summer smallmouth stuff at some point in the near future here. But yeah, we appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it was
dude.
fun.
Had a blast, and appreciate you sharing your knowledge as well with everybody else. And like Andrew said, it is pretty wild that it really wasn't that much difference when what you're doing out there in essentially the Midwest compared to what we're doing over here in the Northeast. Smallmouth or smallmouth?
Bass is a bass.
Bass is a bass is a bass. Well, for anybody that's still here watching, greatly appreciate you hanging out. Do us a favor, go over to Ben's channel if you haven't already, although he's like 10 times bigger than we are. So subscribe to him if you haven't already done that. Follow social media, the whole 9 yards. For everybody that watched us, we appreciate you. We thank you for coming over to hang out with us tonight. If you haven't done so yet, drop a like on the stream before you go. Subscribe if you haven't done that yet. You know, the whole shebang. Before Andrew signs it off, we will not be on next week because I will be in Miami.
Piece of shit.
I was looking at my phone. We're playing video games the other night. Me, Andrew, and one of my best friends, Chris. I was like, wow, it's going to be 80 next week. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, sorry, just for me in Miami. I'm awful. But I get to go to a trade show for work and talk fishing. My actual job, it relates to transducers and fishing. I have an awesome job. So I get to go to a trade show and talk to customers about all sorts of stuff.
Thank you, Brian, for saying that. I hope Miami has a cold front.
It'll still be 60. My wife was pissed. I kept telling her, I'm like, I'm going to send you a selfie every day of a new palm tree I walk by on my way from the hotel to the expo. And I was talking to my coworker. We already found a really awesome restaurant that makes like Cuban sandwiches.
Oh my God. Oh, your Miami is way too far. Never mind.
Wait, what were you going to say?
I was going to say Outriggers in New Smyrna Beach is like top tier, the best restaurant I've ever been to.
All right, we'll get there eventually.
Anyway.
All right. Again, thank you, Ben. Andrew, sign it off.
We will see you guys next week, like always, at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time at youtube.com/almost at 603 Bass. Reel Nothern Bass. Adios, muchachos.
Everybody, have a great night.